Welcome to Quotation Analysis and Robots. We'll be discussing a debate about robots taking jobs just as a way to practice doing a strategy I call quotation analysis. So writing is a conversation. It may not always seem that way, but when you are writing to communicate ideas to somebody else who then receive them and interpret them in their own way. And in that sense, you are actually participating in a dialogue, only the person on the other side is silent. Because conversations are not one-sided, you need to imagine the person on the other end of your argument or the other end of what you're writing, because you're trying to convey an idea to them, not just write for yourself. There is writing that would be just for yourself, and we would call that a diary or a journal. But in college writing, or if you're writing for publication, or most any other type of writing, the purpose is to create a dialogue among yourself as the writer with somebody else who would be the reader. So in your interactive handout, please do the following activity. State your opinion on welfare in response to this person's opinion. So you're not just going to make a broad, sweeping argument about welfare in general. We're going to read this debate. We're going to read this opinion, and then you're going to respond to this person specifically, as if they talk to you, and then you're going to give them an answer. So I found this opinion on a place called debate.org. This is not my opinion, okay? It's just for activity purposes. So this person said that the welfare system is unfair. It places the burden of the irresponsible on those who are responsible. In short, it is government theft to take money from one group of people to another group. The responsibility of earning an income and providing for yourself and or your family should rest on the family alone. So in the space provided on your handout, I would like you to free write for 3 minutes. Okay, you're going to respond to this person's argument. Do you agree, disagree, or maybe a little of both? Explain. Next activity. We're going to kind of start gauging how persuasive we might be to different audiences, okay? So in this next activity, on a scale of 1 to 10, how persuasive was your argument in response to that person's argument, depending on the different audiences below? So you might want to read your argument out loud and imagine your mom and or your dad, okay? How persuasive, how would they have agreed with your statement on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being they don't agree with it at all, and 10 being they totally agree with what you said. Then do the same thing for your best friend. Imagine reading that out loud to your best friend. Would they be persuaded? And would it be a different number than mom or dad? Because we have different they have different opinions, right? Then think of someone who's the opposite or different gender from you. Would they have a different opinion? A different racial background from yours? The opposite political affiliation? A lower economic class than yours? Or even a different belief system? Okay, so for each one of these, come up with a number. How persuasive do you think your argument on welfare was to all of these groups? The next part of this activity, I'd like you to go into Canvas and watch this video. Again, for copyright purposes, I cannot just play a video within my video once it's uploaded to YouTube, but you can watch it on your own. So I would like you to pause the video and go to Canvas and watch this very short video on miscommunication through TED Ed. Here are some key takeaways from TED Ed's miscommunication video. Human communication is complex, okay? It's not a matter of just relaying a message and then that message is received and then that person gives another message and then that message is received exactly in the way it was intended, Okay. We interact in a transactional model of communication. The listener and the speaker, or the reader and the writer, create meaning together. Okay, the speaker speaks their own interpretation of the message, while the listener interprets the message that they receive. Interpretations of meaning are determined by personal perceptual filters. Okay, so essentially, your race, your class, your gender, your education, culture, background, and experiences all inform your personal perceptual filter. So when you are reading, or someone tries to persuade you, or you're given a message of some kind, that message goes through a filter, and that filter was determined essentially by your whole life, right? So in a way, you kind of take your life, your race, your gender, your class, education, all of those things, and you turn them into a kind of pair of glasses. And then you put those glasses on when you interact with the world. And that's how you see the world, okay, is through those experiences. And so you have to be aware that different readers are going to react to different messages in different ways. Okay, so the transactional model of communication applies to reading and writing just as it would to speaking. So to communicate through writing, you need to pay attention to how you are replying to your message, or how you are relaying your message. What style are you writing in? How might that affect how your message is received? What may confuse the reader and make your message difficult to interpret? What perceptual filters might your reader have? And are you catering to them? Okay. You're not just trying to argue with people that already agree with you. You're trying to persuade others who may not. And that may mean addressing some personal perceptual filters that that reader has that is interpreting your argument in a certain way. How can you alter your message to address those filters? What filters might you have? What biases might you have? In what way can you think beyond your own biases and adopt new ways of thinking to be more persuasive? One way to do that is to ask yourself, so what? Who cares? Why does it matter? Okay, so by answering these questions in your arguments, by explaining to the reader how so, who cares, why does it matter, that helps show your reader the different ways that they can adopt your opinion. Essentially, it's how we come up with explanation in our writing or in our speeches. So why should we care? Researchers found that tweeting or checking emails on your phone may be harder to resist than smoking or drinking. Well, that fact by itself doesn't persuade anybody to do anything. Might be a shocking fact. It might, on the surface, persuade a few people to worry a bit about, the pull the phone has on them. But so what? Who cares? Why does this matter? Right? So what if they found this out? So what if it's harder to resist checking your email than it is to drink or smoke? You have to explain it and give it purpose. Give the fact some meaning to the reader. Why does it matter? Well, half of all people from high-income families have a bachelor's degree by age 25. Just 1 in 10 people from low-income families do. Well, so what? Who cares? Why does this matter? Right? It's just a fact. A fact on its own doesn't do much, right? Anybody could read this and say, okay, that's kind of sad. Or, oh, that just doesn't seem fair. But why? Why would it not seem fair? Why is this maybe a warning to the future if only high income families are getting bachelor's degrees? And why is such a low number, right, for low income families? How hard must it be to finish an education? Right? So explaining all those things would be necessary to make that fact have, a reason for existing or a reason to end up in your paper. So if you disagree or even agree with somebody, you have to explain why. So it's not your argument that's so interesting while someone's reading your paper. It's how it's going to be argued and why do you have this opinion that you have. So you need to do more than simply assert that you agree or disagree with a particular view. You also have to offer persuasive reasons why you agree or disagree. To do that, you got to know your audience. What might they be thinking? Usually, a writer will have an intended audience, a general sense of who will be reading the article, essay, or book. But what perceptive filters might that intended audience have? And in fact, your intended audience may not be the whole audience. You might have an argument and you might in your head think, well, I'm already arguing to somebody who will agree with me. But that's not going to be very persuasive to a general readership, which is who you need to convince or who you need to persuade. We don't always know who our audience is. So sometimes having a few audiences in mind can help write your paper. So your reader is a critical reader. Opinions mean nothing to critical readers without evidence. Evidence never speaks for itself. You must speak for the evidence and reveal how you arrived at your conclusions. By themselves, opinions have little power to convince. You must always let your reader know what your evidence is and how it led you to arrive at your point. In this way, the evidence and your point of view work together. So, for example, one could argue that robots will replace human workers in the future. But so what? Who cares? What's the point? That might disturb some people. It might not disturb others. But why is this a problem or why is this a good thing? You would have to explain that in an argument. Here's an opposite reaction. We should implement basic minimum income to offset unemployment. Basic minimum income is essentially giving every single person in America a check for, I don't know, $800 to $1,000 a month. And if anybody wants more than that, then they have to go get a job and make a little bit more. Okay, so that's the idea behind basic minimum income is everybody gets a check from the government every month to survive. Because the robots, technology is going to replace a lot of workers. And once those jobs are replaced, for example, truck drivers, what happens to the truck drivers, right? So eventually, if robots just start taking over all of these jobs, there won't be enough jobs for everybody. And so one argument has been to implement basic minimum income so people don't have to worry that they'll starve, or be homeless in no fault of their own. And again, this would need explanation. So what? Who cares? Why should we give people free money? Can't they just get a different job? What will happen? Like, you really have to explain it because a lot of people wouldn't agree with this. Or maybe they do, right? But you have to always think of the person that doesn't agree with you and what perceptive filters they have and what their arguments might be in order to persuade them. So I've come up with a questioning method that helps you do just that. To debate effectively, you need to know more than just your position. You need to be able to persuade others by explaining, which would be that third element in a body paragraph, in a pie paragraph. So this questioning method or quotation analysis activity allows you to predict the opposition's points. If you can predict how they might disagree with you or need clarification, you can effectively persuade them to take up your position. In other words, you have to ask yourself questions the opposition would ask in order to be effective at persuading the other side. So the first step in doing this is you need to gather evidence. You have nothing without evidence. If you don't have the evidence for an opinion, you can't have the opinion in an academic essay. Okay? So textual analysis requires you to think closely about a text before you form your own opinion. In other words, you examine the evidence first and then you respond. And this makes sense. A lot of students or student writers who are writing research papers and arguments, and they're new to this, they have an idea of what they already think is true, right? We should not abolish the death penalty, and they have their reasons why. But they haven't done any research. So they truly don't know where they stand because it's not an educated point of view yet. So what they start doing in a research paper is they only look for evidence that supports their point of view, right? Like, well, other people must have my point of view. I'm just going to go online and only find the stuff that supports my point of view. The problem with that is a critical reader will see right through that. They'll know that you just cherry picked the evidence, right? And you have to make your argument seem balanced in order to persuade other people. So one method is to withhold your judgment or withhold your opinions first and find the evidence. Educate yourself first on, if we're talking about the death penalty, right? You would research the death penalty and, all of the things that go into it, how much money it costs, whether or not it is effective at deterring crime, all of the arguments you thought you had, right? Really read it and say, is there evidence for any of my opinions? And maybe I might change my mind. So the first order of business is to find the evidence in the first place, because that's what you need in order to have the argument anyway. Right? So step one, you research. You find opinions to respond to. I went and took this opinion from an article through Business Insider called "Here's Why Robots Taking Our Jobs is a Good Thing." You can access this article. You can either just type it into Google, or you can go to the interactive handout for this lecture, and I've linked it in there if you would like, if this is an interesting debate for you. But this is just a sample debate. No one's writing any papers about this. This is just an example in this lecture to illustrate how you would do quotation analysis with this questioning method. Okay, so I went ahead and I found this quotation from Michael Balfour. According to Michael Balfour's Business Insider article, "Here's Why Robots Taking Our Jobs is a Good Thing." Of course, this depends on our valuing as a society individual knowledge, creating thinking, curiosity, and all the other things that elevate us above the level of machines. It depends on our fostering the kind of society that not only frees people from menial labor, but also enables them to reach their full human potential, not just go begging for want of a lousy job. Okay. Now ask yourself, would you think that robots taking your job is a good thing because it would release you and it would release you from a lousy job, right? Would it enable you to reach your full human potential if a robot took your job or your parents' job or your friend's job? Okay. Ask yourself, did this author, Balfour, persuade you? Why or why not? Does he try to approach the discussion with your values in mind? What questions did he not answer or address that you might have? Step two, after you found evidence or an opinion you'd like to respond to, you need to reveal your personal perception, right? Your personal interpretive lens by restating the quote in your own words. You reveal to the reader how you're reading the quote, and we've done that with quote sandwiches. That is the point of interpretation. You are showing the reader how you were reading this quote. You were revealing how you've read this with your personal perception or your lens. And this is the one I came up with, my interpretation. Balfour argues getting rid of minimum wage, unskilled labor jobs will allow people to pursue passions. If corporations and the government are willing to let robots take menial jobs from humans, people won't need to work unfulfilling jobs to survive. Step three, you predict your opposition's questions. What will your opposition say? So prepare for your explanation. This is the body paragraph of each point by asking, so what, who cares, why does this matter? Generate questions your opposition might say, and then answer those questions to generate explanation. Okay, so you just start questioning your opinion and their opinion. So what? Who cares? What's your opinion? React to the evidence. Then ask a question, then answer it. Then you ask another question in response to your previous answer. And then you answer that question. You ask another question in response to that previous answer. Then you answer that question. And then you just keep going until you're done with the paragraph. For example, you react to the source. So from the very beginning, we had Balfour's quote. Then we interpreted it. Then you react with your opinion, what your reaction is. What is your point of view? Do you agree, disagree, or a little bit of both? And here's an example I came up with. Balfour argues getting rid of minimum wage, unskilled labor jobs will allow people to pursue passions. If corporations and the government are willing to let robots take menial jobs from humans, people won't need to work unfulfilling jobs to survive. Here is my reaction. Robots will free people from menial jobs as long as the government provides unemployment for a few months to allow people to find better jobs, not yet taken by robots. Okay. How did I come up with my opinion in response to Balfour's argument? I just asked myself, well, what is my point of view? Do I agree? Do I disagree? Or a little bit of both? And to me, I agreed and disagreed at the same time. Okay, yes, robots will free people from menial jobs. And then I thought of something that he hadn't thought of. It's like, but wait a minute. What are people going to do in the meantime if they lose a job to a robot? Right? Will they be able to afford to pursue the passions that they have that robot just released them from doing that job, right? That was preventing them from chasing their passions. They're going to need to survive, right? So that was my opinion in response to that person's opinion. Then you do a questioning answer in order to explain yourself, right? This is where the analysis comes in, where you're trying to explain your logic to the reader. Okay. So in order for me to do that, I had to ask myself another question. What would my next sentence be? How might I persuade my reader? So I asked myself, so what? Who cares? Will that really happen? And then I said, at first, it may not happen right away. It may take longer than a few months. And then I thought, well, then, okay, if it does happen, what should people do? Well, there should be a mandatory warning from the company to help them transfer to new employment. Then I thought, well, what else can we do if that might not work? Well, the government and the corporation should provide tuition for new training. Well, why? Is that fair? Right? I was predicting maybe my opposition wouldn't think that's fair. So then I said the government wants to improve the economy. If the workers get an education and training for a better job, the person will get more pay compared to what they had before, rising in socioeconomic class income, which then goes back into the economy. So then that way, that would make it fair. Though the government hasn't cared about our passions before, creating income equality in the economy will give people more of a chance to do so than they had before. All right. Then this is the draft. So as you can see, I crossed out all the questions that I had, but I used those questions to generate my explanation or my analysis. This is where all the persuading happens, right? You have your point, which doesn't persuade anybody. Either someone agrees or disagrees with your point, that's fine, but you didn't have to do any work for it, right? The evidence needs to be there by default, but evidence by itself doesn't convince anybody of anything, even if it's attached to an opinion. What it needs is logical persuasion, which is what this is. Okay. In order to come up with good logical persuasion, you need to predict your reader's questions. And that's what these questions were. I came up with a statement. I asked myself questions to help generate persuasive explanation. When you're done with that step, you would then summarize this. Okay. You could summarize this in a sentence, and that would give you the point of your paragraph. Okay, because if a point is your opinion, well, this would be my opinion, this whole paragraph right here, or this explanation here. If I were to summarize it, I would say essentially robots will not allow people to pursue passions. However, robots improve the standard of living for low-income, unskilled workers, which will fuel the economy and raise the standard of living for everyone. Okay, and you put it all together and you've got yourself a pie paragraph. And this is what it looks like. A persuasive pie paragraph. Essentially, robots will not allow people to pursue passions. However, robots improve the standard of living for low-income, unskilled workers, which will fuel the economy and raise the standard of living for everyone. According to Michael Bellafour's Business Insider article, here's why robots are taking our jobs is a good thing. Of course, this depends on our valuing as a society, individual knowledge, creative thinking, curiosity, and all the things that elevate us above the level of machines. It depends on our fostering the kind of society that not only frees people from menial labor, but also enables them to reach their full human potential, not just go begging for want of a lousy job. Balfour argues getting rid of minimum wage, unskilled labor jobs will allow people to pursue passions. If corporations and the government are willing to let robots take menial jobs from humans, people won't need to work unfulfilling jobs to survive. Robots will free people from menial jobs as long as the government provides unemployment for a few months to allow people to find better jobs, not yet taken by robots. However, it may take longer than a few months. There should be a mandatory warning from the company to help them transfer to new employment. The government and the corporation should provide tuition for new training. The government wants to improve the economy, and if the workers get an education and training for a better job, the person will get more pay compared to what they had before. Rising socioeconomic class, income which then goes back into the economy. Although the government hasn't created about our passions before, creating income equality in the economy will give people more of a chance to do so than they had before. Now, keep in mind that this is a draft, right? I use this questioning method, and I'm very quick when I do it. I come up with questions and I answer them right away. You'd have to, redo this paragraph a bit. I can already tell I've got some pretty big claims in there. They might actually have to become their own paragraphs. Some of the evidence isn't quite there yet for all of the claims that I have. Yes, I have an opinion I am reacting to, but I'm talking about the income. I'm talking about equality. I'm talking about training. I'm talking about how this would, help the economy and fuel the economy. I might need a few numbers to truly argue that effectively. But I didn't think I needed that at the time. And now that I do, that's how I can revise it. I would go and I would look up that data and I would enter that into this paragraph. So some people have a hard time with analysis. This is probably the hardest part of a body paragraph, right? Everyone has an opinion, so the point's not always that difficult. Everyone knows what evidence is, and most can generally, with a little bit of training, which you've all been through, evaluate evidence properly and critically. But then how do you explain your opinion in response to that evidence you find? That's not always easy. So there is a textbook I used to teach called They Say, I Say. And from it, they have all these great templates, ways to kickstart your analysis, or, statements that you can fill in the blank for to help you, logically deliver your argument. And so I've found a greatest hits one. I've been through and I found a bunch that are helpful for generating explanation. So you could use some of these templates maybe if you're having a hard time figuring out how to persuade the reader. For example, you can disagree with reasons, right? So you could say, by focusing on income inequality, by focusing on all the good things robots will give us when they take our jobs, Balfour overlooks the deeper problem of income inequality already, and that, there aren't enough jobs that satisfy people's passions, right, in the long run. You could say that. You could agree, but with a difference. Okay, I agree that robots taking our jobs might be a good thing because it would, allow us to pursue our passions and release us from a job that we don't like. A point that needs emphasizing, since so many people believe that they're stuck in their jobs and they can't get out of that bad situation. You could say that. You'd have mixed feelings. I do support Bellafour's position that robots taking our jobs is a good thing, but I find, and this would be somebody else's argument, about one thing and Z's research on something else to be equally persuasive. Okay, so you could be, this person, I agree with them, but this other person also has some good points. And you could be like in the middle trying to figure out where you stand with whom more. Here's a few others. You could disagree with reasons. You can agree, but with a difference. Stressing disagreement, no but. Although I agree with Bellafour up to a point, I cannot accept his overall opinion that, robots are a great thing for, freeing us from crappy jobs, because people need those jobs. They don't want those jobs anyway. I don't see how them losing a job to a robot will free them. Couldn't just quitting a job do the same thing? Clearly they need that job for a reason. They wouldn't go if they didn't have to. Right. And then here's some more. There's some yes, but stressing arguments, although I disagree with much that X predicts, I fully endorse his final assumption that, and then you would claim that. Though I concede that, and you give them, a bone for their argument, you say, okay, I throw them a bone. I still insist that they're still wrong, and this is why. So you go through and you find the ones that you like the most, right? Some you're just not, you don't like them. That's fine. Don't use them. But there might be 2 or 3 in here that might be helpful for you if you're having a difficult time or a challenging time trying to figure out how you should word something. So those are theirs. Now, in the next assignment, I'm going to have you watch a lecture on how to take triple entry journals for research. These templates at the end here of these slides might be very useful to you when you fill out those triple entry journals in that third column where you have to start explaining your research. And you'll learn how to do that in the next lecture. Just know that you might come back to this lecture or to these slides that are on Canvas to help you do that part of the assignment.